Alright, here we go. Lesson 15, classwork and examples. Rules for today are that whatever I have written on my screen, please have recorded in your book. I'll be checking these first thing when I get back, whether it be Monday or Friday. So please be sure that everything that I am going through here, that you are also going through with me in your book. I'm going to be going through the examples and a few of the exercises, and then when I'm finished, you guys are going to find one other person to work with, or you can work by yourself, and you're going to complete the exercises, and you're going to do the problem set just like we would in class. Okay? So here we go. Lesson 15. Our lesson today is locating ordered pairs on the coordinate plane. So you guys should already have some background information about a lot of this, because you're going to hear a lot of the same terms that we talked about in lesson 14. But in example number 1, there are going to be 5 vocabulary terms that I'm going to discuss as we do this exercise. So please be sure that everything again is written down and that you understand what each one of these terms means and how we're going to use them today. So in example number 1, it says the point below represents 0 on the number line. Draw a number line to the right, starting at 0, and then follow my directions for the rest. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this first. So I'm going to draw a number line on the right, starting at 0. So this point is 0. And I'm going to extend my number line 5 units to the right. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, like this. And much like we've been doing throughout this module, I'm also going to extend my number line left of 0, which means these values would be less than 0, which would mean they would be negative. So I'm also going to stop this number line at -5 so that they're even on each side. And then have -1, -2, -3, -4 there as well. Alright, and what I have just created here is obviously a horizontal number line. But when we talk about in terms of coordinate planes, we call this the x-axis. Okay, and this tells me how far I go left or right on my coordinate plane. Alright, and now what I'm going to do is I'm also going to start from 0 and draw my vertical number line. And I'm going to have the same values, or the same scale, and I'm going to stop at 5 and -5 and put my points in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, -2, -3, and -4. And as you can see then, between these two number lines, the horizontal and the vertical, we have a point where they intersect or where they meet. And this point is my dot. And I know you can't answer this, but does anybody know what this point where these two number lines intersect is called? Well, this is called the origin. Okay? And the origin is located literally at point 0, 0. It's where we start all of our ordered pairs. It's where we start counting. Okay? And then going back to my vertical number line, if the horizontal number line in reference to coordinate planes is called the x-axis, this one is called the y-axis. And to go along with my points on an axis, when we are given an ordered pair, such as the point -3, 2, each one of these is called a coordinate. It helps me locate where that point is. And we've talked about these as reference to, like, this 3 here would be called first coordinate, and the second one here would be, the number 2 would be called second coordinate. Well, these are also known as the x-coordinate, so the first number would be the x-coordinate, and the second number would be called the y-coordinate, and this tells me how far I go on each one of my axes. So for example, if I had to plot this point -3, 2, I would start on my x-axis, so I'd start right here at the origin, and move 3 points to the left on my x-axis, so 1, 2, 3, and then I'd move 2 points up, so 1, 2, and my point would actually be like right here. And if I wanted to call this A, this would be point A at -3, 2. Okay? So, 5 vocabulary terms. We have origin, x-axis, y-axis, and then we also talked about the x-coordinate, and then the number 2 here would be the y-coordinate when you're given an ordered pair. Alright, so number 1 was kind of like a review about ordered pairs, how to plot them. We are going to be talking about it, especially when we get down to example 3, a couple of new things. So make sure again, for example number 1, all this is written down. And if you need to pause the video, feel free to pause. All right, here we go. Example number 2. So this is just, again, a little bit of review of what we just talked about, making sure that you understand exactly what we just did. So number 2, it says all points on the coordinate plane are described with reference to the origin. Again, that's where we start. That's where we count from. It says, what is the origin and where are its coordinates? Well, the origin is where the x and y axis intersect. It's where they meet, okay? It's where they touch. And that point is, again, going to be 0, 0. I don't move at all along my x-axis, and I don't move along my y-axis at all. It's where they meet. It's also where we start counting, okay? So, to finish our paragraph here, to fill in the blanks, it says, to describe locations of points in the coordinate plane, we use ordered pairs. And you guys should be familiar, hopefully, with how to plot these with our practice of the minion activity. And order is important in ordered pairs. So on the coordinate plane, we use the form xy. And the first coordinate represents the point's location away from 0 on the x-axis. And the second coordinate represents the point's location from 0 on the y-axis. So again, if you need to, you can pause this video, write down what needs to be written down, and then when you're ready, you can push play, and we'll move on, because I'm going to go on to number 3. All right, actually, these are exercises. So we're going to be talking about points that lie on both of these axes here. Okay, so number 1, it says use the coordinate plane to answer parts A through C. Graph at least 5 points on the x-axis and label their coordinates. Well, we just talked about the x-axis, and it's going to be this line right here. And I'm looking for points, 5 points, any 5 points that lie on this line. And then you're going to kind of tell me about those points. Well, let's say I want to plot this point right there. Okay, well, how would you label that point? Well, that point tells me that I'm moving 4 spots away from the origin to the right and 0 spots up, so I'd label it 4, 0. Let's pick a different one. Let's go negative, so I'm just going to pick -1 there. So this point here would be -1, 0. I'm 1 spot away from 0 on my vertical number line, and I didn't go up any. 1, 0. Okay, some more that I could pick since I have to pick 5. I'm just going to pick -3, 0, 5, 0, and 7, 0. Okay, those would be my 5 points that fall on the x-axis. You don't have to plot them all. Just know that any of these points would be located on the x-axis, anything that's highlighted in pink there. Okay, letter B, it says, what do the coordinates of your points have in common? Well, if you take a look, all of them have a second coordinate, or a y-coordinate, of 0. Okay, so we're going to say the y-coordinate is 0. And then it says, what must be true about any point that lies on the x-axis? We're going to say the y-coordinate has to be 0, and then we're just going to say what that means. We do not move vertically. Okay? We're going to stay, and we're going to be on this horizontal number line and just move however many units it tells us away from 0, given the point of our x coordinate there. Okay, letter number 2 and letters A through C are just the same thing, but they are talking about the y-axis now, so it's just a little bit reversed. So I'm going to take my highlighter and I'm going to use yellow instead. And we're going to be talking about all of the points right here on this y-axis and how we would go about locating and labeling them. So let's say, again, starting off the same way, let's say I wanted to find this point right there. Okay, that point is located on my y-axis. Well, this point would be, using ordered pairs, would be 0, -2, telling me I do not move along my y-axis. I don't move horizontally at all, but now I move 2 spots down. Okay, same thing, I'll just pick a positive point here if I wanted to plot this point. which is also on the y-axis. This would be 0, 1. Again, I don't move horizontally at all. I don't move on that x-axis. I just start from the origin, 0, 0, and I move up 1. And then again, I'm just going to pick 3 other ones that would lie upon my yellow highlighted line, but I'm not going to locator label them. So let's pick 0, -4, and 0, 4, and how about actually the origin 0, 0, okay? That would also fall somewhere on that yellow line. And letter B, it says, what do the coordinates of your points have in common? Well, if we take a look, now all of my first coordinate, or my x-coordinate, are 0. Right? And again, if my x-coordinate is 0, it just means we do not move horizontally. We're going to stay up and down on that y-axis. And then number 3 says, if the origin is the only point with 0 for both coordinates, what must be true about the origin? Well, this tells me the origin is the only point that lies on both the x and the y-axis. Okay? So it's the only point that lies directly on both, and that's because it's where they intersect. And it's where we start counting. All right, again, if you have any, if you need any more time on any of these, feel free to pause the video. But now I'm going to move on to example number 3, which is going to be the teaching point kind of for the rest of our lesson today. All right, so in example number 3, the key term here that we're going to be talking about is going to be these quadrants. And I know we discussed a little bit about the quadrants on the pre-test, but as you can see, that when you have the x-axis, which is the first thing that we drew, going back to example number 1, and the y-axis, and they intersect again here at the origin, it splits the coordinate plane into quadrants. Again, the prefix quad meaning 4. So it splits this coordinate plane up into 4 equal pieces. And what we have to do is know which quadrant, we need to know how we're going to label them, and where a point lies in relationship to a quadrant. So for example, if I gave you a point, you should be able to tell me which quadrant it lies in. So the first thing we are going to do is we're going to be talking about numbering these, okay? So this quadrant, this whole thing right here, any point that lies in this shaded region is going to be quadrant 1. So I'm going to put 1 and Roman numeral number 1 above. And much like the conversation we had when we took our pretest, we don't put number 1. We use Roman numeral number 1 because when we talk about ordered pairs, there are numbers everywhere. So by using Roman numerals, we know that we're talking about just quadrants. Okay? So this is probably the one that you guys are most familiar with. Most of the points that you have plotted in the past have been in quadrant 1. And that's because all of these points, both the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate, have been positive. Okay, so this means I'm moving to the right, and I'm moving up, which puts me in quadrant 1. Okay? And when we count, again, we are going to be moving counterclockwise. So if you think of this as 12 o'clock on a clock, we're going to be moving backwards in time. So quadrant number 2 is actually going to be over here. Okay, and I'm going to label that again with Roman numeral number 2. And the points that are in quadrant number 2 are going to be negative for an x-coordinate and positive for a y-coordinate. So again, this tells me that I'm moving left from the origin and up, which puts me in quadrant number 2. And I'll color quadrant number 2, I'll just color it in green here. Okay, so any point that lies anywhere in green would be in quadrant number 2. And then continuing in our clockwise direction here, this would be quadrant number 3, labeled with the Roman numeral number 3. And any point in quadrant 3 is actually going to be negative and negative. So a negative x coordinate and a negative y coordinate. And this tells me that I'm moving left about the origin and moving down about the origin as well. And I'll use a different color highlighter here. I'll use pink. And that means that any point that falls within this pink space here would be in the third quadrant. And last but not least, we have quadrant 4, which is labeled Roman numeral I and then V. And quadrant number 4 has a positive x coordinate and a negative y coordinate, which means we are moving right about the origin and then down. So moving right along the x-axis and then moving down on the y. And I will color this in a yellow. And that means that any point that lies here in the yellow colored space would be in quadrant number 4. Okay? And then in the exercises below, I'll just do 2 of them to get you started. You're going to see how you're going to use these quadrants. Okay? So this would be a good reference point. So if you did have like colored pencils, you could color them like I did. Or if you want to grab some now and pause the video, you're more than welcome to do that. But this is pretty nice to see. Make sure that you have over here the signs of your coordinates, just like I have labeled, like positive, positive, negative, 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 and positive, negative for each one of your coordinates. This is going to help you answer the questions below. So make sure that your example number 3 looks somewhat like mine, and make sure that you at least have all of either quadrants here labeled, so you know if I find a point in one of these shaded regions, which quadrant it belongs in. Alright, so here we go. Exercises 4 through 6, I'll do A and B with you, and then I'll talk about some of the other ones and what I expect, and then the rest of the time is yours to work. So the first thing we have to do here, it says locate and label each point described by the orders pairs below. So we should be able to do that. 7, 2 is going to be 7. So I'm going to count 7 to the right of the origin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up 2 to be right here. And I'm going to label that A because that's letter A. And then it also tells me to indicate which of the quadrants this lies in. Well, this one looks like, if I move back up here, any one that is labeled in blue looks like it would be in the blue shaded region. And that would be then quadrant number 1. So I'm going to put a 1 here, Roman numeral number 1 for letter A. I can also tell that this would be in quadrant 1 because if I go back up here, in quadrant 1, both my x coordinate and my y coordinate are positive. And if I go down here to 7, 2, both of these numbers are positive as well. Okay? So here we go. Letter B would be 3, negative 4. So before I go ahead and plot this point, I'm going to use what I know about what I have written down above and try to identify which quadrant it would belong in first. Well, if I take a look here, 3 as my x coordinate is positive, and negative 4 as my y coordinate is negative. So which one of these coordinates, if I look up here, has a positive x coordinate and a negative y coordinate? It would be quadrant number 4, this one right here. Okay, so positive, negative. So I know that when I plot B here, I know that it needs to fall in quadrant number 4. So I'm going to go over 3, 1, 2, 3, down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And B is going to be right here. And again, this is quadrant 4, IV. Okay, so that is how you are going to complete exercise 4. You're going to plot the points and tell me which quadrant it lies in. Try to use the little hints that I gave you above about the signs of each one of your coordinates to identify which quadrant it would lay in. Okay? Exercise number 5, you need to give me actual points. So I need to see ordered pairs of a point that would lie in each one of the following quadrants. So in quadrant 1, give me an ordered pair that would fall in quadrant 1. Quadrant 2, same thing, 3 and 4. Okay? And then number 6, do you see any similarities in the points within each quadrant? And explain. Alright, and then the problem set should be pretty self-explanatory. If you do not get any of the questions, just skip it, or ask your partner, or ask somebody else in the class, ask the substitute if need be. But if you're really confused, just come in the morning and see me. Otherwise, we'll start with any questions that you have when I get back about any questions on lesson 15. So at this time, you may stop the video, and you are to work with one other person. Please, no groups. I don't want groups of 3 or 4. You can work with one other person to complete the rest of lesson 15.